I remembered this form because I once sent a friend here after his marriage blew up. Back then, I told myself I would never end up in a place like this, that I knew my wife, that my brother was the kind of man you could lean on even when he was a mess. I am 42. My wife is 39. My brother is 50. We have been married 16 years and together 18. We have 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl. I used to repeat those facts out loud like a little creed because they made me feel anchored. Now I say them for a different reason. I need to hear the shape of my life when the rest of it sounds like static. The day it all split started as ordinary. I was driving my oldest to a practice game. He was half talking through tactics, half scrolling his phone. My phone buzzed at a stoplight. I usually ignore it when I am with the kids, but the name made me look. A friend, not a best mate, but close enough to know us. He asked if I was anywhere near a restaurant in town. He said he hoped he was wrong. He said he thought he had just seen my wife there and that she was not alone. He did not use my brother's name. He did not need to. I turned the car and took a different road without thinking. We pulled into the lot and I saw 2 cars on the far side that should never have been there at the same time. I told my son to stay put and then told him to come with me because I could not do it alone. We walked in and the smell of garlic and hot bread hit me, and for a second I thought I might throw up. They were in a booth near the back. They were holding hands like a couple that had stolen a weekday afternoon to be young again. He leaned in and kissed her, and it was not a quick kiss. I felt something click shut inside me. My son tensed like he was going to walk over. I put my hand on his shoulder and he understood. We turned and left and they never saw us. We sat in the car and stared straight ahead. I told him we would do nothing while our heads were on fire. He nodded and it was not a happy nod. We drove and then we went home and I decided I would gather proof before I opened my mouth. I hate that word inside a marriage, but that is where I was. Proof meant I would not be told I misunderstood what I saw. Proof meant I could not be drip-fed half-truths to keep me spinning. The next days were a blur. I booked tests because even if you think you know your spouse, you do not know what you do not know when the ground opens up. I dug into devices and accounts. I am not a hacker, but I am not helpless either. There was a private email hidden in plain sight. The password was lazy. The first messages I opened made my hands shake. I stopped at 8 years because my head rang, and then later I pushed further because the number did not matter anymore. 14 years. It started when she was pregnant with our first. I remember joking back then about her drive. I thought I was a champion husband. My brother noticed too. He sent a few messages that should have been shut down in seconds. They were not. A month of talk turned into a physical affair, and then it became the kind of entanglement that does not end just because 2 people decide to act like it ended. I kept reading until I knew enough to stop. I refused to read anything that might tell me whether any of my children are not mine by blood. They are mine. A lab will not change that. I saw a lawyer because I live in Australia, and the rules here do not care about my feelings. No fault. A separation clock to start. Practical steps. I nodded and left with papers that weighed more than paper should. She met him again after the day at the restaurant. I knew where because patterns are obvious once you admit you're looking for them. I almost walked in. I did not because my son had already carried too much, and I promised myself I would not turn his anger into a job. In the end, I could not keep the act going any longer. I asked my brother to come over. He lives close. He showed up fast. I asked my wife to sit with us. I asked my son to join. Many will say I should not have, but he was there at the restaurant, and I was not going to make him rewrite what he saw alone in his room. I stayed calm because I had burned for days and had nothing left to burn. I told them I knew. My wife tried to wear a mask that did not fit. My brother looked like a man who had been caught by gravity. My son said what he needed to say, and I let him. I said I was done. I said they did not have to sneak anymore. I said my brother was no longer my brother in any practical sense. I said my wife and I would divorce, and that I wanted it civil for the sake of the kids. Everything of substance sits under my business and my name. I built it before I met her and kept it clean inside a trust my parents handed down. We never mixed accounts. We ran parallel streams. I told her to leave the house. She could live with him or not. The kids would see them elsewhere. My house would be safe for them. Saying it out loud did not feel triumphant. It felt like cutting a rope to stop being dragged. Christmas hung over all of it like a heavy sky. I come from a big family. 16 kids in the original lineup, spouses and in-laws and grandchildren, and a handful of great-grandchildren. Every year we pack a backyard for a long barbecue lunch. It is my favorite day. They asked me to keep quiet until after the holiday, as if moving the timing could move the truth. I chose not to. I told everyone by email and I told my parents in person. My mother cried and said she thought she had raised us better. My father and I told her it was not her fault because it was not. The rest came in waves. Anger chewed through the room. Another story came out about him making passes at another brother's wife years back. She had stayed quiet then to protect the family. She did not stay quiet now. My brother went to his house and pushed it further than it should have gone. People stepped in. Nothing useful came from it. A clear message did come from the family. They were not welcome at Christmas. Her parents called to apologize for her. I told them they are still family to me, and I meant it. One of her sisters had known. I shut that door and locked it. They left for Vanuatu to let the season pass without them. The house filled with nieces and nephews anyway. The kitchen went loud and messy. I had hard moments, and then I had easier ones because laughter is a kind of medicine you forget you need until it is in the room again. A small part of me felt sorry for them because pity sneaks in through cracks. I let it pass. On paper, the separation moved cleanly. We agreed on custody that keeps the kids steady. She lives nearby. The business remains untouched. The house remains mine. We started the 12-month clock. For a while, I did more than survive. I slept. I lifted weights and put weight back on in the right places. I ate well. My sister set me up on 2 half-dates that reminded me I am still a person and not a shadow. He ran away to Asia with a backpack and texted a few photos and then went quiet. He may not come back. That is fine. Then I made the mistake I could see coming and did not stop. The kids were at a cousin's sleepover. She came by. We talked. We slid. It had been months. She knows me. I said no, and then my body overruled my mouth. It felt like relief, and then the relief brought a bill. It did not happen once. It became a pattern. The therapist called it a kind of bonding that happens after catastrophe. The label did not help me sleep. It messed with my head because I had told myself I was done letting her write on my walls. Then she said she was pregnant. The dates lined up. There was no one else in the window. I went quiet in the car and then went quiet at home because I did not have a way to hold it. She pushed me to celebrate, and I could not. The talk turned into a fight, and the fight turned into the worst thing I have ever done. I pushed her into a wall. She was not injured. That sentence does not make me feel any better when I read it back. I have never done that before. I will never do it again. I am not a violent man, and I hate that I put my hands on anyone, let alone a pregnant woman. I apologized and we both calmed down and made up in that sick way people do when they are caught inside a loop. She now has leverage because of the system here, and because anyone would. Domestic violence against a pregnant woman is not a small thing, and it should not be. I hate that I gave her that tool. I hate that I am writing this sentence at all. I have to own it. I did it. I will never do it again. The same weekend brought another hit. We were with family for Anzac, and the house was full again. I walked in on my oldest kissing his cousin, his uncle's daughter. I reacted, and it was not pretty, and then I tried to steady myself. He tried to justify it with anger and logic that falls apart under any light. I told him I am not his enemy. He looked at me like a boy who has been trying to carry a mountain. We spoke later, and he tried to lay out reasons and history and feelings that go back years. I told him that grief and rage are not maps. I told him this has to stop. I called his therapist and mine. I am trying to keep the conversation open while also making a clear line. It is not easy to do both. I am the adult and I have to be the adult. If I miss this inside my own house, That is on me. I also know that I can only fix what I can see, and I am learning to see now. The pregnancy changed nothing about what I want and changed everything about what I have to do. I will never take her back as a partner. I will show up for the child. I will keep my boundaries. I will formalize the rest. The divorce will move once the clock allows it. The custody plan will stretch to hold a newborn. The contact will stay about the kids. I will not open my door at midnight because loneliness and habit knock louder than sense. I will keep saying out loud that my older kids are mine and always will be. I will not add a lab report to this house unless it is a medical necessity. I will not write romance around a new baby just because a baby is a powerful thing to hold. There are moments when I think about the restaurant and I reroute my memory to the part where my son sat in the car and chose restraint. That is who I want to be. There are moments when the mind movies start and I remind myself that I am not a detective anymore. I am a father who packs lunches and answers emails and fixes a leaking tap. There are mornings when I forget for 2 seconds, and then it all lands again. On those mornings, I make the bed and drink water and lift something heavy and call a friend. It is not profound. It is how you keep moving. I know some will read this and say I am weak for letting her back into my bed. I am not arguing. I did a weak thing. I am writing it down so I do not pretend it was anything else. I know others will say I am cruel for telling my wife to leave and for cutting my brother off completely. I do not have another way to live and stay sane. Forgiveness and boundaries are not opposites. I can wish them clarity from a distance. I can also leave a room if he walks into it for the rest of my life. Christmas happened without them, and the world did not end. The new year arrived, and nothing reset. The calendar changed anyway. He is still overseas, and I hope he stays there. She is still nearby and will be closer soon because of the baby. I will be ready. The only thing I am sure about is that I will not build a house for anger. It gets a chair at the table and that is it. The rest of the chairs go to the kids and the parts of me that still work. I make dinner. I check homework. I answer hard questions as simply as I can. I lay down rules and hold them even when it would be easier to collapse. If you have never been here, you think you know what it feels like because you have watched movies and heard songs and read posts like this. I thought I knew. I did not. It hurts in places you did not know could hurt, and then you get up and go to work and you realize survival is not dramatic. It is repetitive. It is 1,000 small decisions that add up to a person you can stand to be. That is all I am doing now. I turned left instead of right on an ordinary day and saw the life I was actually living. Everything since then has been a long drive home where I keep my hands on the wheel and try not to miss the next turn. Reflection version. I tell this now from a little distance, not because the pain is gone, but because I have learned to carry it differently. If the timeline is a camera on my shoulder, this is me at my kitchen table with a cup that has gone cold twice while I try to put the last year into words that make sense. I used to think a good marriage protected you from ordinary disasters. We were fit. We rarely fought. We made time for the kids and for each other. People said we looked like the couple who figured it out. I believed them. The truth is that appearances are not shields. They are just angles. The betrayal was not novel. It was two people making a series of selfish choices for a very long time. It started when she was pregnant with our first. It kept going through holidays and birthdays and a dozen family dinners where I stood at a barbecue while he laughed and she laughed, and I thought I was lucky. The ugly part is how normal it all was. There was no mastermind plan, just little doors that kept getting open. I discovered it because a friend sent a message while I was driving my son to a practice game. I took a different turn and walked into a restaurant and saw what everyone sees in movies, but never expects to see with their own eyes. I learned later that this had been going on for 14 years. Private emails, careless passwords, patterns that only look obvious once you decide to look. In Australia, the law does not care about the why. It cares about clocks and papers. I started the clock and gathered the papers and told the people who needed to know. I told my parents in person. My mother cried. My father looked at the floor and then at me. The family decided to close ranks around me and the kids. We disinvited the two people who made Christmas unsafe. It sounds harsh until you try to imagine little cousins running underfoot while adults trade looks no one can decode. We kept finances separate from the start. It was not romantic, but it saved me from another layer of damage. The business stayed in the trust my parents set up long before I was married. The house stayed with me. We agreed on custody that kept the kids steady. For a while I did well. I turned exercise into a way to move grief through my body. I let my sister set me up on soft landings with good people who reminded me I could smile without pretending. He left the country. I did not waste time asking why. Then I did the one thing I should not have done. I let her back into a part of my life that felt safe and was not. It started with a quiet house and a long talk and familiarity that short-circuited common sense. It was not a one-off. It became a rhythm. People call it many names. What mattered was what it did to me. It slowed my healing. It turned boundaries into suggestions. It led to a pregnancy. The dates made it obvious that I am the father. I did not fake happiness. I also did not shirk responsibility. I will show up for this child. I will not rebuild the marriage that burned. These two truths can coexist even if they confuse other people. The worst part of that stretch is the moment I put my hands on her during an argument after the appointment. I pushed her. She was not injured. That is not a comfort. I am ashamed of it. I said it out loud to my therapist and to a friend. And now here because secrecy rots everything it touches. I have never done that before, and I will never do it again. If you have never lost control, you will not understand how fast it happens. If you have, you will know that owning it is not optional. I do not excuse it. I am accountable for it. Another wound opened when I found my oldest kissing his cousin. He tried to rationalize it with the chaos around us. I put a stop to it. I also kept talking because slamming a door without a plan can drive kids further into the dark. Therapy is not magic, but it gives the anger somewhere to go. We are working. He is a bright kid who has been carrying more than he should. I tell him he is not the author of the adult's mistakes. I try to believe it for myself as well. Looking back, the lessons are simple and hard. Boundaries keep you sane. You can forgive from a distance. Family loyalty is not a debt you have to keep paying when a person keeps cashing it in. Finances that look unromantic can save you from a second disaster. Secrets will always come out, and when they do, the room gets quieter and smaller and somehow safer. Kids do better when you stop pretending. Anger is not a strategy. It is a weather pattern. You carry an umbrella and you keep moving. I no longer speak to him. If I find myself in a room where he is, I leave. That is not drama. That is health. I speak to her as a co-parent. We keep the conversation narrow. When the baby arrives, we will add routines and stick to them. The older kids are still mine without caveat. I will not test them to satisfy a curiosity that can only hurt. I remind myself that the urge to know everything is a trap. I know enough. The restaurant still shows up in my dreams sometimes. I have taught myself to change the channel. I do not replay the kiss anymore. I replay the moment in the car when my son chose restraint. I replay the drive home when we both agreed without speaking that we would not let rage make our decisions. That is the day I started to feel like the person I want to be. If you are where I was, you will be tempted to do something big and theatrical. You do not need to. Do the boring things. Call a lawyer. See a doctor. Tell the truth to the one or two people who will not make it about themselves. Eat real food. Sleep when you can. Lift something heavy. Do not open doors at midnight. Put your phone on silent. Schedule therapy and actually go. Start the paperwork you are avoiding. Make the bed. Small wins pile up if you let them. I do not know what people expect from an ending to a story like this. There is no tidy bow. The divorce will finalize after the clock does what clocks do here. The custody plan will absorb a newborn and stretch around sports and school. Holidays will be redrawn. I will show up. I will keep my temper. I will not build a house for anger. I will give it one chair and keep the rest for love that is not confused with possession. Sometimes I think about how easy it was for them to do what they did, and I feel the old fire come back. Then I look at my kids and the feeling changes shape. The measure of my life is not what they stole. It is what I build anyway. I am not the man I was when I sent a friend to this forum years ago. I am not the man I was when I walked into that restaurant. I am the man who learned that survival is repetitive and quiet, and that dignity is a decision you make every morning without witnesses. If you are reading this at 2 in the morning with your chest tight and your hands shaking, you are not alone. You can get through tonight. You can make coffee and take a shower and send the email you do not want to send. You can keep your voice steady in rooms that do not deserve it. You can refuse to turn your anger into a map. You can be the parent your kids need even if you were not the husband you wanted to be. You can choose not to be defined by the worst thing that happened to you or the worst thing you did. You can be better tomorrow in boring ways. The day I turned left instead of right, I thought my life ended. It did not. It changed. The old version of me would hate parts of this new version. That is fine. He is gone. I am here. I make dinner. I pack lunches. I answer questions. I set rules and hold them. I get up when the alarm calls me and I put my phone down at night. I keep my door closed when it should stay closed. I show up to the appointments. I write the checks. I forgive myself slowly. I forgive others from a distance. I teach my kids that love without boundaries is not love. I remind myself the same thing when the house is quiet and the past knocks with a familiar rhythm. I do not open the door. I let it knock. I go to bed. I wake up and try again.